From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hello, you fine young badasses around the world. Whether you are in Iceland or Iowa City, India or Indio, California, Ireland, Inverness or Inverness, Canada, we are covering all of the I's today, all of the U's, and it's great to have you here at the Badass Counseling Show. My name is Sven Erlandson. I am your host. I am joined in studio actually by Rob the Rocket, but I am joined by whatever with KC, so she'll be checking in as well. Rob the Rocket, Speak to me.
It's all magic, you know. Any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's where we're at, my friend.
Well, and what all y'all don't know is that we had a little snafu today. We're getting a little bit of a late start, technical things, and Rob figured it out, though, and so we have a guest who was patient and waited for us. Fascinating. This is, I believe, a first for us on the Badass Counseling Show. Rob, if you would, tell us about Elvis.
I would be happy to, Sven. Elvis wrote into us and said, I am a 24-year-old gay trans man. My parents' marriage of 32 years is ending because my religious homophobic father, who is a therapist, is a gay prostitute. I went no contact with my abusive parents several years ago when I got sober. My dad relapsed after 22 years of sobriety, and he became a better person after starting to drink again. When I got sober, he kicked me out, so my husband and I cut contact with him and my mom. Years later, my mom finally left him after discovering the depth of his infidelity. I now have a relationship with my mom, and she acts like his cheating is the worst thing he's ever done, even when she has taken him back in the past. I feel like the decades of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse towards her children is worse than the cheating, but that's just me.
Elvis, great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we get started, for the sake of our listeners, we are in a brave new world, and where words like gay, trans man, for a lot of people are disorienting, and understandably so. It's new for a lot of people. Would you just take 30 seconds or a minute and help my listeners and dumb old me help me understand what exactly that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So what that means is I was assigned female at birth when I was born. I originally had a different name, and I was raised as a young woman. When I became an adult, and there were a lot of signs when I was younger, but when I became an adult, I decided to transition to male. My name is Elvis. I go by he, him pronouns, and I am married to a man and identify as gay.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. That helps. All right, so let's dive in then. What's unique about your story is, well, all of it. And so it's one of those where sort of, I want to ask you, I want to open, you don't state a question, which is fine. So I'm going to start you with simply this question. What is the issue? There are so many issues on one hand, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any of those is what you're struggling with most. So I want to know ultimately, what is it right now in your life that is the hardest part of what you're struggling with in your story?
There's kind of two pieces. And the first one is like knowing that my dad's done a lot of terrible shit, but still missing some of the good times that we had. And then also with like having a relationship with my mom, she just kind of brushes everything off as, oh, it's just your dad's fault. It's just his problem, but he's gone. So now everything's okay. And just constantly bringing up his cheating and not any of the other stuff he's done. And so there's just a lot of like resentment towards my mom right now.
And do you resent her most because it's almost like she's saying two things. I blame your father for everything, but then she's not blaming him for the really bad stuff, which you say is the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse towards the children. She blames him for the infidelity towards her, but doesn't want to discuss or even look at the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's interesting in your description of your dad, you said dad's done a lot of shit, but I kind of miss the good times. And the way you say it, in delineating what dad did, you don't even really delineate. You just sort of say he, sort of a cursory mention to it that he did a lot of bad shit. But then when it comes to the mom stuff, you do more delineating, which seems to imply to me that you see dad shit and it's ugly and it's nasty and it's bad. But there's also that side of I miss the good times. Yet with mom, I'm really fucking pissed at mom.
Accurate.
Okay, and so let me ask you this then. If you were to distill it down to one sentence regarding mom, what are you most pissed off about, most angry at mom about? Really, what does it boil down to?
I guess just the fact that she's not seeing her part in all of it.
And what is her part in all of it?
That she let it happen to such an extent where, like, when I was 16, I was drinking. My dad was still sober at the time. I actually woke up between them with his hand down my pants. And like, I've tried to talk to her about things like that had happened, where she was like, well, I didn't know. And I'm like, you did know, you were there.
And so what was the turning point for you in terms of when did you realize, this is a big question that people wrestle with who are children of abuse. That was particularly when it's committed by one parent and not the other. Did the other parent know? And so what I'm wondering was, what was it that sort of tipped the scales for you? Was it that story? What was it? Because you feel bad. Gee, I can't really blame, in your case, I can't blame mom if she didn't know, right? And so a lot of people struggle with, well, did mom know? Or in the other case, did dad know? Whomever. What was it for you that caused you to finally realize, or maybe you it was never in question, what was it that caused you to finally realize that mom fucking knew?
Pretty much that moment. It felt like there was no way she didn't know.
And was that you sleeping between them and dad sexually molesting you, was that a one-off to the best of your recollection, or did that happen to the best of your recollection repeatedly?
That was the one-off where mom was present.
Got it.
But it had happened mostly in the past. But that was like the last time that it happened.
Wow. So mom knew. There's really no way mom could have not known. Wow. Yeah. And so then this is a strange question, but it's an honest question, okay? To you, and it's almost an unfair question. Tell me to go fuck myself if you don't like the question. I won't be offended, okay? Which is worse, the sexual molestation or the knowing about it and allowing it?
I almost feel like the allowing it, especially with like the fields that they were in with their jobs. Like I watched them protect so many other kids. And so I definitely feel like especially where I am in life right now, the knowing about it is worse.
And what, you don't mention what mom's career was. You mentioned that dad is a therapist. What about mom?
Mom is a teacher.
No, for fuck's sake.
So she's taught a bunch of different subjects at charter and private and Christian schools all over our state.
Oh, Christian schools too. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
This is a very religious household.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. Right. And nothing for all the religion lovers. I'm not a religion hater at all. I'm a former clergyman. It's just that there are those folks that put on a good show who ain't living the life of their religion, their faith. So let me ask you this. So your dad sexually molested you. You mentioned also, did your mother sexually abuse you at all?
She did with her words.
Oh, wow. The mere fact that you hesitated in answering that says there's some shit there. Okay, she did with her words. Tell me how do you sexually abuse someone with your words? Help me. And I'm not saying it's not, I know what you mean, but help us understand.
Yeah. So there was a lot of like her, like even when I was like an older teenager and wasn't yet sexually active, like a lot of her like calling me a whore, a slut. And then eventually diving into other slurs when I came out to her. But when I started dating, there was a very like, hey, don't have sex before marriage. That's a big deal. And she told me like word for word, she goes, but if you do, you better open your legs and keep sleeping with him so that he marries you and doesn't leave you. So it's not a sin anymore.
Oh, Lord. I just want to pull out the lens here. We've zoomed in on some things. I want to go out to the wide angle lens. And it's a strange question. What % do you think you have at 24 tackled and really sorted through all the shit from your childhood?
It's one of those things where like I try to give myself kudos for how far I have come, especially being sober. But realistically, probably less than 50%.
Wow. And that's understandable. Just for the record, it's amazing what you have done from what little I know of your story. And that's incredible. And to grow up in that swamp, every direction, everything, and your mom calling you a whore and a slut and so forth, on top of all this stuff with dad. And I applaud you for that. It's a courageous act every day. To get sober, I have a lot of listeners and followers and clients who know how extraordinarily difficult that is. What was it for you that enabled you to get sober?
I had a friend at work who knew I was struggling with alcohol, like even before I knew, and it was during the pandemic. And so he invited me to a meeting, and I just saw, like I went to this meeting in this shabby church basement, and it, like, people were having fun, like just genuine smiles, joking with each other, all while dealing with their problems, their issues, their sobriety. And it just kind of clicked where I was like, I want that. Like, I don't like how I'm living. I don't like going home to my parents' house every day and being miserable and being abused. Like, I want something different.
Wow.
And that's how I kind of started that.
And so how far in are you? How long into your sobriety are you?
A little over 3 years.
Congrats. I want you to clear something up. It seems a little, I think for a common mind like my own, just a regular guy, it's a bit of a brain scramble when you say that dad's done a lot of shit, including sexually molesting you, and that dad is a religious homophobic father who is a gay prostitute. And yet you say, but there's a part of me that misses the good times. For a lot of people, that's like, does not compute. Help me understand. I'll be devil's advocate. How could you possibly miss good times with someone who sexually molested you?
Yeah, so we kind of only really started having a relationship after he relapsed. I would say like 19 or 20, and the abuse stopped. He and I went to concerts together. We got drunk together. We got high together. And so I feel like maybe my brain's just kind of like fucking up the wires where it seemed like good times. But like, it was like we had a relationship. And there was even a time where like I got sober for about a month. I came home, started drinking, and he like looked at me and he goes, "I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad you're back." And so like just kind of constantly chasing those little like nuggets of having fun with my dad.
And so your dad was glad to have you back since you had started drinking again? You had relapsed, or that now that you were sober? What were you at that point when he said that?
When I had relapsed. So when I told him that I wanted to get sober the last time, because my official sobriety date's December 1st. So like a week before that, I told him, hey, I want to get sober. Like, I want to try this. He was like, well, then I don't want you here. I don't want you in my house.
Wow. So I only want you if you are drinking and you can be my party friend and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. Did that hurt to hear? Dumb question, but did that hurt to hear?
Yeah, it really did. Like, it just kind of proved that he wasn't interested in me as a person. He was just interested in having someone like validate his shitty choices and being like, and I did it too. I was like, see, like, it can't, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm here with my dad. And I think he did the same thing where he was like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm here with my kid. And meanwhile, we're both just like getting fucked up and partying and making bad choices. So I kind of, like, it just kind of solidified that like he wasn't interested in me as a person or as a child, like, at all.
How much of your going into the drinking and craziness was out of a desire to connect with your father?
Not until I was older. So I actually, so the first time I detoxed, I was about 12 years old. And I detoxed at home. So it was probably like age 19 that I started to actually like dive into going to like on big benders and stuff as long as my dad was there.
And what do you think it was? Put it into words. What do you think it was that you were in all of these years, the young years, the teen years, the late teen years, perhaps even to today? Well, you stated missing those good times. What do you think it is, if you were to distill it down to one sentence, that you're most wanting, even still, all things considered, that you're still wanting from your father? What is it you've been wanting this whole time?
Honestly, I just want a dad. Like someone to call when your car breaks down or taxes are due, or like, like my husband and I have a house now, and like whenever something goes wrong, like he calls his dad. There's like a little bit of jealousy there where I'm like I just want that kind of like father figure to just call and talk about my day.
And you're tearing up a bit there, and that's all right. What are you feeling right now as you talk about that?
Mostly sad, just kind of heartbroken that I didn't get that opportunity, and it kind of feels like I might never.
Okay, and so let me ask you then. You said someone to call, someone to connect with, a father figure, when something's going on. If you had that, then what?
I just kind of view it like maybe like a safety net almost.
What, a financial safety net, or what do you mean?
More like an emotional safety net. Like someone who's been through life, who like knows me because they raised me, and I can just connect with them on like a completely different level.
And that emotional safety net is fundamentally conveying to you in a hard time or in a good time or whatever, is fundamentally conveying to you what? What's the message being conveyed by an emotional safety net?
That no matter what happens, it's going to be okay.
How would it feel to hear an emotional safety net, a father figure, parent who loves and cares? How would it feel to hear them say, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. It's going to be okay"? How would that feel?
That would kind of be all I like have wanted. That would kind of be everything.
Give me a feel. Give me a feel word.
Relief.
Now, if I'm on a job and I show up at 6 a.m. and I'm relieving the person who worked the night shift, I'm their relief. I'm relieving them of their duties, of their responsibilities. You say it would be a relief to hear that from a father figure. It's going to be okay. What is it a relief of?
I just kind of feel like it's just the everyday responsibility of like, having grown up so fast, I feel like I just need a little relief from being a grown up.
And so if an emotional safety net father figure comes in and says, "It's going to be okay, honey," it says that to you, it feels like a relief. It feels like a reprieve from the everyday responsibility. In what way? I mean, the everyday responsibilities are still there. How does hearing that bring relief, bring a sense of calm? How? In what way? Why?
Honestly, I don't really know. I don't know if it's just like, I'm trying to think of the words, to be honest.
Take your time. Take your time.
It's just kind of like calming. Like, I feel like it's like when there's so much going on and bills and my students are being crazy and there's just so much going on. Like sometimes I just need to like breathe. And I feel like if I had someone to be like, "Hey, it's going to be okay," like I could just settle for like just a second.
And how would that be different from your husband saying it?
I try not to put like the responsibilities of a parent on my husband, where like he does a wonderful job of comforting me and being there for me. But he's also only 25 and he's got his own stuff. And I feel like it's just different when it's someone who like was from birth given the responsibility of caring for me. Whereas like my husband chooses to love and care for me, which is amazing. But I feel like I don't want to put that pressure on him to get from him what I'm seeking from a parent.
Okay. So let me spitball it and then you correct it. I don't mind being wrong. Okay. I'm going to try to sum up what I think I hear you're saying. That it would feel so profoundly comforting to know that there's someone who can accept, sort of, who can hear my troubles, listen, and cares. It's not just this person is a therapist and I'm paying them to do it, but it's someone that I can go to at any time and listens and cares, and their vessel, their salad bowl is so big that it can contain whatever is in my salad this day, whatever difficulties, that they can handle it. They've been through life, and they can say, sweetheart, you got this. It's going to be okay. This is just one blip. In other words, and they're not getting all frantic and worked up by your stuff. They're not, oh my God, that's too much. No, don't tell me this. In other words, they don't have a small cup to contain your big problems. They have this giant salad bowl that can contain your problems, and it's not so big. But someone who gives a shit, who wants to be there for you. And I'm sure, and as you said, your husband does, but your husband's salad bowl is full of your husband's own salad of stuff. And that would provide a sense of calm to know that the problem isn't so big that it can't be handled. The calm of knowing that somebody gives a shit enough, and that not just somebody, but this particular person. And so what would that, you said it would make you feel calm, it would feel a relief from the burdens. Play with that idea of what this would provide, having that father figure. Having that father figure, and it's so cool to hear this from a gay trans man, that there's, unfortunately, in our society, there's so much animus between so many men, and the whole trans thing, and that's bullshit. So to hear a trans person talk about that lament of the loss of father, the longing for father, says that father bond can be just as powerful as the mother bond. And so talk about that idea of having that person, that emotional safety net, that connection. Talk about it in terms of, does it fill a hole? Talk about it in terms of completeness. And maybe it doesn't relate to that. I know for some people it does, but maybe it doesn't relate to that. In other words, are you chasing something that's been missing the whole time, or anything like that? Play with it.
I mean, yeah, like I've always kind of searched for like that connection to like blood related family. And I don't really know why that's been something that I felt like I've needed. But yeah, like I feel like having a dad, but preferably my dad, like fill that role. Like it just kind of feels like I have a whole chunk missing.
Okay. And I'm going to want to know what that chunk is and why blood related right after this break. Let's take a quick break, Rob.
Now here's one of Sven's clients talking about his experience with badass counseling.
What I wanted to be able to get across to other people is just how much you're able to deep dive into what's been going on in my life and help me figure out where and what caused that, to help me solve and find those problems in my life to change where I'm going forward. None of the other therapists I went to with that, they try and help me figure out some other issues that may or may not be coming up, whereas you're able to dig down, find the core of what's going on. And I haven't been able to find that before. I just want to get more people aware of where you can go to in case you want your own therapy. And getting the hole in my love cup was one of the things that changed my life.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform, and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
We are back with Elvis, and we are discussing longing for the father connection. And you said, Elvis, that you've been seeking that emotional safety net. You've been seeking that something from blood relative. Why blood relative? I know you said you didn't know, but I want you to spitball it. Why do you think it is you're seeking that from blood relative? And what precisely, in the shortest amount of words, what precisely are you seeking from a blood relative, and why a blood relative?
Just kind of seeking that deep connection of like having known me from such a young age to now, like having someone who doesn't just meet me now, but has known me through the whole journey. And I don't know if it's an environmental thing where like, so in my area, there's a lot of people with really big families. And so to have a small family or even a non-existent family was so rare that it was like, I'm just like kind of left out of that.
And seeking a deep connection from someone who's known me the whole time. Let me ask you this question. With the people that have known you the whole time, have you felt rejected, unwanted?
Yeah, for sure. Especially like getting sober and having my dad like, be like, okay, I don't want you here anymore. And then when I came out to my mom, there was an entire altercation that got very physical. And she's very accepting now, but those are really the only people I had in my life who have known me for so long, and they just weren't interested. Any aunts and uncles I had did not have interest in me after I came out.
And so them being not interested caused that little, at the time, girl to feel what? Because they weren't interested, it caused you to feel what, and it caused you to believe what about yourself?
That I was a burden and a mistake.
So I am a burden, I am a mistake. Anything else? I am what? What did you believe was wrong with you, or what did you, because a child's brain will conjecture, make up a story. Absent the love, they'll make up, well, something's wrong with me and so forth. So I'm a burden, I'm a mistake. Anything else?
That people have more fun when I'm not around.
Oof. What % of your identity today still is those?
Probably like 70%, where I still feel just wrong.
And so is it safe to say then that the big chunk of you that's missing is that 70% sort of is no good? Is it safe to say that what you're really seeking then is a repudiation of that message, that the two people above all else who caused you to believe that you are a burden, a mistake, and that people have more fun when you're not around, the two people who caused you to believe that, you're fundamentally wanting from them the acceptance and perhaps the acknowledgement and apology for the harm that they've caused. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
And that makes total sense. And that's a universal thing. That has nothing to do with, at the root, that longing has nothing to do with, you being a gay trans man and so forth. Nothing to do with that. That is every single one of my clients. Every single one. So let me ask you, if you were to be specific, I'm going to give you about 5 or 6 options that all start with the letter A. What do you think it is? And let's just look at your father. What do you think it is above all else that you're wanting most from your father? Is it attention, affection, approval, acceptance, acknowledgement, or apology?
I think out of those, like the top one is apology.
And above all else, what do you most want Dad to apologize for?
Just the hell that he put me and my sister through.
And in the hell, I mean, to me as an outsider, being sexually molested tops the list, but I've never been sexually molested. I was not physically and emotionally abused growing up. So I'm an outsider. I'm an amateur. Mm-hmm. Tell me for you, what is at the top of the list of the hell?
The sexual abuse is at the top. There's a lot, like there's so many holes in my memory from childhood, but there's a lot of like burning our stuff. I want to say 13 or 14. So I was using drugs. I'd actually just been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in my entire body from my jaw to my toes. And I'd become suicidal. And someone had told him, I confided in a youth pastor, and the youth pastor told my dad. And my dad came into my bedroom while I was crying, like myself to sleep. And he goes, hey, so-and-so told me you're suicidal. Is this true? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, just remember anything less than 5 stories just hurts.
What a fucking dick. Fuck him.
So,
I'm sorry. Fuck him. What a cruel, sadistic motherfucker. How old were you at this time?
I was in middle school.
Fuck him.
I was 13 or 14.
Fuck him. I have no mercy. I know he's your father. Forgive me if I'm being disrespectful, but fuck him. That's hardcore fucked up. And I think you and I both fucking know it. That's hardcore fucked up. What kind of sick fuck says that shit?
Yeah, so from like just feeling just completely worthless.
I am so sorry, Elvis. I am so sorry. And beyond apology doesn't even cover it. Remorse, penitence, and penance. That is disgusting. That is fucking disgusting. I am so fucking sorry. I am so fucking sorry for all of it. I mean, the sexual abuse, horrific, but that on top of it, and you're already suicidal. Of course you were suicidal. Of course you were. Let me ask you, if you were to be completely honest, and I think you know my story well enough to know that I was in a 12-year suicidal depression, what percent is suicide still a part of the equation in your life, or thoughts and so forth?
I was actually just thinking about this the other day. Like I'm going to use the word blessed. Like to have friends now, to have a husband, to have a job that I love. It's so little these days. Not even like passively.
Right. Why is this? What is it for you? I'm really curious. What is it for you that has sort of transitioned you out of the intensity of the suicide? I mean, for me, it reached the point where it was every day. I was thinking about it multiple times a day. And then there was the slow transition out. And there were things in my life, but who gives a shit? I want to know what it was in your life.
It was so slow. So like the first 2 years of my sobriety were probably like out of everything, emotionally and mentally, like the worst of my life. But the last year, I've just been a lot more authentic. Taking my transition seriously, being open and honest with the people around me, taking my sobriety super seriously, helping out at the rehab in my city. I work with autistic children. So like every day is just kind of filled with these little moments of joy. And I just hold on to those as tightly as possible. I write them down. I tell everyone about those happy little moments. And every day I wake up and just try to be a little bit better and a little bit healthier.
Beautiful.
And so I get excited. I get excited for what is going to come up in the future. And that helps me not think about suicide being an option. That's
great. And bless your heart for the work that you do with autistic children and so forth. Not my gift. That is a whole different skill set, patience level, and love, and so much love coming back at you, but in its own ways. And so bless your heart. And I know a lot of families who listening and following that have autistic children or adults. And so thank you for that. Let me ask you this. Apart from the ongoing transition with regard to your gender and your sexuality, what is the biggest area of your life where you're not fully authentic yet, or where it's scariest to most be authentic?
So as far as like gender goes, I am out to everyone. I'm very open about it. It doesn't, I live in like a part of the Bible Belt. So there's some issues.
What the hell are you thinking? What are you thinking? You're a missionary among the heathen. I'm teasing. No, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we do have some issues. Like with my husband being a nurse, when they find out he's married to a man, like they don't want him in the room. So there are times where we just kind of like cover that up.
Sure.
Quote unquote.
But as far as your own authenticity and striving for each day, which all of us are, I mean, this is such a big part of, what Badass Counseling is about, is helping people become more and more authentic. So for you, the gender thing done, it's out, and so forth. So then where are you most struggling in your life, or what is the thing where you're not yet fully authentic and still striving?
I don't know. I definitely feel like I kind of restrict myself in my personality a little bit. Like I'm always worried about like being a burden or being too much. And so I take on a lot of responsibilities at work, and sometimes get burnt out. I take a lot of responsibilities on at home, where I just kind of take on everything so no one else has to worry about it.
And so then presumably so that then I will be liked, or I won't be rejected. That if I'm taking on more responsibilities, then they won't see me as a burden, and then they won't reject me. Or ballpark?
Yeah.
Right. And isn't it interesting? It goes back to that message from childhood, core belief: I'm a burden, I'm a mistake, people have more fun when I'm not around. And so you're still fighting that core belief because you don't believe I'm not a burden. In other words, you don't believe I'm a blessing. I'm a good person. People love me. And I know this is weird to say, weird to think, but no, it's not only that I'm not a burden, I'm a blessing, and people love me just as I am. I don't have to keep, selling, because that's what you're doing. You're selling yourself. You're taking on more burdens so that people won't think I'm a burden, and I'll do more. No, I got it. And you're burning yourself out. And that burning out, that depletion of energy, is your own self talking. Remember, our self talks through our energy. That which gives me energy and breathes life into me, and I'm jacked up and excited to do, or that brings a sense of calm, that's authentic self. That which bleeds me, bores me, numbs me, that which I have to conjure up energy to do, that which feels just heavy, tiresome, that's not me. So in your work towards your own authentic energy or your own authentic self, it requires reading your own energy. And this is why I constantly tell people, I'm constantly recommending the book, and it's long out of print, but she does a brilliant job of explaining this in such simple terms, is the book by Shakti Gawain, a New Age writer from the 90s, but it's a great book. The title of the book is Living in the Light, and the author's name is Shakti Gawain. She talks about how just if you don't, it's not an intellectual exercise. It's just a matter of reading your own energy. And so other than taking on extra responsibilities, what is the biggest thing in your life where the energy feels off, where you're having to conjure up energy, or where it's sucking the life energy out of you, just in terms of raw energy? What's the other area of your life that's bleeding the most energy?
Probably my mom. Just like she'll start spouting off random things about like my dad and how awful he is for like only mentions the cheating. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. And just kind of like ignore it or let her go.
And what is it you're still wanting from mom? Because you have a relationship with mom. And so you're continuing this relationship that is bleeding your energy, which tells me your authentic self doesn't want it, or at least doesn't want it at this moment because of the stage that it's in, where she's just ignoring all this shit. So you said with dad, it was an apology you most wanted. So I'm going to list them again. What do you most want from mom? Attention, affection, approval, acknowledgement of all she's done, or apology or acceptance?
For her, acknowledgement. Like I want her to acknowledge her part in all of it.
And just out of curiosity, percent likelihood of that ever happening? Because she's basically and you giggle, I hear you giggle, that would mean admitting that she allowed sexual molestation of a child. And that would mean admitting that she called her own child a slut and a whore. Percent likelihood, and I can spitball, but I want to hear from you. Percent likelihood she's ever going to do that.
Probably like 10 or 15.
Oh,
like
wow.
She'll own the light stuff, but there's no way she's gonna own the big stuff.
Okay, so you are barking up the wrong tree on one hand, that you're wanting an acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement, presumably, like the apology that you want from your dad, presumably those would bring a sense of healing. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what we're acknowledging then, recognizing that's 10 or 15% chance, you keep going back into the firefight with your mom, hoping that maybe today is the day, or that if I just keep the connection, maybe someday I'll get it, when you have a 24-year pattern of behavior on the part of your mother indicating there's no fucking way, or it's a slim to none chance. And you can keep going and maintaining that relationship with your mother. It's your choice. It's your life. You can do as you wish. But the bottom line is, there's a low percentage, and you're subjecting yourself to this repeated reminder from your mother of fuck you. I'm going to protect myself at the expense of you. And the underlying message is, and this is what hurts, the underlying message is, you don't matter enough to me for me to own my shit so that you can heal. You, my child, you are getting the exact opposite message of the emotional safety net. The emotional safety net says it's going to be okay. Your mother is saying, fuck you. I'm going to let you drop. Oh, you're on the high wire trapeze? Emotional safety net catches you, if you're on the trapeze. Well, you're up on the fucking trapeze trying to connect with your mom, trying to walk across that fucking trapeze wire. And she's saying, no net, fuck off. I'm going to protect myself. The net's under me. Fuck you, little person. I don't fucking care. Right. And the sucky part is you know it. I ain't saying anything you don't know. And so let me ask you, and there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious. What would it take to either continue to hold on and accept that and keep having the relationship with mom? Or what would it take to finally let go of ever getting that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just something like within myself, or it gets a little complicated because my younger sister and niece live with her, which is one of the reasons I like entertain. Like it's honestly the only reason I reconnected with her. Like she left my dad, and that's what I was like, okay, I'm willing to reconnect, so that I can have an easier relationship with my sister and my niece. But there are times where like everything's cool and we don't think about the past, and we just talk for a little bit, and then there are times where like something will come up, or she'll bring it up and she'll be like, "Oh, your dad's a cheating fucker," and I'm like, "Yeah, but how about all the other stuff?"
No, there is no other stuff. I hear nothing. La, 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 la. Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this. One last sequence of questions I want to ask you, Elvis, and you've been so open. Just out of curiosity, in your entire life, and this is going to be a dumb question, but in your entire life, have you ever hated yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. At what period of your life did you hate yourself the most?
Probably teenage years.
Teen. And are we talking like early teen or mid-teen or late teen, roughly, just ballpark, or maybe it's all of them?
Pretty much all of them.
All teen years. Okay. And what % did you hate yourself during your teen years?
Like 80 or 90.
80 or 90%. Okay.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity.
Being in the closet and all that stuff.
Okay, fair. What % do you hate yourself presently? And if so, what %?
Presently, it's so much lower. It's like 25%.
Beautiful. Okay. I mean, it sucks that there's any, of course, but that's encouraging. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what was the very earliest you can recall hating yourself? What age?
Earliest is probably going to be about maybe 6 years old.
Jesus. Do you ever yourself aspire to have children? No right or wrong answer, and maybe it's none of my business. Just out of curiosity.
I do one day. One of my dreams is to be a foster parent.
Brilliant. I love that. Let me ask you, if you knew that your 6-year-old child hated themselves, how would you feel as a parent?
I would be devastated. Like I think about my clients who are 4 years old and 8 years old, and like if they ever came to me hating themselves, like I would be a mess. I would be devastated.
Right. And you didn't even birth that child. You take care of them every day and love them with your whole heart. But it would be you would think it would be even more so for a parent. Just out of curiosity, when you were 6 years old, what % do you think you hated yourself?
It was pretty high. It was probably like 70 or 80%.
Wow. Already by 6 years old. Just out of curiosity as well, presently, what % do you hate your mom, if at all?
Probably more like 60%.
When do you think in your life, and it may be right now, when do you think you hated your mom the most?
When I was late teens. So because of these instances, I would actually, my then boyfriend, now husband, I would sleep with him like on the phone, because she would come into my room in the middle of the night and like shake me awake and tell me like what a disappointment I was and how much she hated me, and call me the F slur. And then would try to tell me like the next morning that never happened, which is why I started sleeping with him on the phone.
Good. Wow. So late teens, you hated mom approximately what %?
Probably like 95.
Wow. How much of in your own self-work, be it with your therapist or journaling or letter writing and so forth, how much have you explored? And we didn't touch on dad with regard to hatred, but we're over here on mom at the moment. How much have you explored the hatred and allowed those feelings to come? I'm not saying acting on it. No, I'm just talking about feeling it and allowing the enormity of that rage and hatred and disdain and contempt to come.
Not much. I think because I am trying to have a relationship with her, like mostly for the sake of my sister and niece, and also to have some sort of connection, like I think I kind of tamp that down. Makes
sense. I would offer one recommendation, that if it is clearly to have that relationship with your sister and your niece, which I applaud, the conduit or what it requires going through mom, or at least interacting with mom, and what will facilitate that and make fewer those times of flare-ups with your mom is actually getting that hate out on your own. Because, and you can sort of microdose that hate, so to speak, that if you're doing it deliberately in your journaling, writing letters to mom that you don't send, don't give to her, But if you're blocking off times where you can allow it out for half a day, even for some people might do it for half an hour each day or every other day. Some people might say, you know what, I'm going to take a Saturday, one half Saturday once a month, and I'm just going to let it come. I'm going to go out to my favorite park in the woods and sit under my favorite tree, my favorite bench, and I am going to fucking flush the shit out of this and keep doing that. But what's the blockage inside of you? And in fact, not just the blockage to sort of smoothing the relationship with mom, because you have to in order to get to your sister, but bringing that sense of healing to yourself, that hatred has to come out. All of it has to come out. And the longer you wait, the longer you delay your own authenticity. The longer you, and this is the hatred to mom, this is the hatred to dad, in addition to all the other feelings. But the hatred is the one we so often don't want to touch because we feel like it's the most toxic, it's the most powerful, it might overwhelm me, etc. But the more you let that out, do you want to know what's going to happen? You're going to discover that there's an inverse correlation, meaning the more of one, the less of the other. There's an inverse correlation between that hatred and anger and contempt and disdain and disgust. That as you decrease that, what's going to increase is your sense of lightness, your sense of no longer feeling like a burden. Because those feelings that you have locked up inside of you are a direct result of being taught that you are a burden, you are no good, you're the S slur, you're the W slur, you're all those things. Okay? And the more you flush out all the feelings attached to that, the more you're going to effortlessly become authentic. And those feelings, that belief that I'm a burden, I'm a mistake, and that people have more fun when I'm around, as if, I impinge on people's fun and I'm no good and so forth. All of that is going to decrease the more you empty that vault that has all those feelings of self-hatred and hatred towards mom and anger towards dad. And it's scary. Let me ask you one final question in this regard, and that is, what's the scariest part about the notion of exploring and allowing and welcoming the anger, the hatred, the hurt, and so forth?
Honestly, I'm a little worried that it won't stop. That it'll just come pouring out of me and I'll just go back to being constantly angry and sad and frustrated, and it won't stop.
Understandable. And that is the single most common thing I hear with regard to this exact thing. And the truth is, at first, it's going to feel like you're eating a fire hose of water coming at you, right? But the more you allow it, it is a finite amount. It is not a forever thing. And the truth is, right now, you're expending a massive amount of energy, whether you're aware of it or not, keeping all of those powerful feelings down, trying to keep that fire hose water from blasting you. Well, that takes just as much energy, that resistance, okay? We have KC here. Do you have any thoughts or questions? And Rob, I'll offer it to you as well. Any thoughts or questions, KC?
I have some thoughts, and I have one question.
Please.
Was your sister abused by your father?
Not in the same ways.
Okay.
He would beat both of us, light our stuff on fire, things like that. When she was pregnant, he dragged her by her feet out of the house and threw her out once because she and I were not even arguing, just yelling at each other from the steps because I needed her to bring me up something. But he never, as far as I know, because we've talked about it, he never molested her.
Have you ever talked to her about it?
A little bit. I don't want to burden her too much. She is significantly younger than me, so we just kind of we talk about it, but we try to keep things light and just work on our relationship and try not to let his shit cloud what we're trying to build.
I see. Just listening to you, I want you to know that I love you. You were talking about, feelings of unworthiness or unlovableness. And I just think you are one of the most lovable people I have ever known.
Such a sweet soul.
I can just feel your energy, and it is just so soft and so beautiful.
Beautiful.
And it is just something, it's a quality in people that for me is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope you just know how lovable you are, because I've only known you for 45 minutes and I am completely in love with you.
That's all of us.
Sven was talking about, have you read Sven's book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup?
I haven't yet. I listen to the podcast quite often, but I haven't read the book yet. I have a couple I'm working through.
So you'll let us know if you want an audio copy or a physical copy, and I'm going to send that out to you right away.
I prefer physical books because I like to take notes in the margin.
Okay. So we're going to send you a copy of that book. But he was talking about the letter writing, and I can understand. I'm a person that mostly my entire life has suppressed a lot of stuff for the exact same reason that you just said. It's just like, if I let it out, it's just going to become, because I'm such an emotional person, that it just feels like it's just going to be this endless flow of shit, for lack of a better word. And one of the things that I've learned from Sven and Sven's book is the letter writing. And for me, that's been the most important tool. And I have to tell, like, with certain family members that have been seriously toxic people in my life that I was just giving the world to, like, a never ending flow of giving from me to them. It's enabled me to express things to them that I was never able to express. And honestly, it never lasts long. I will sit down to write a letter to this person or other people in my life, and sometimes it'll be as long as like 3 minutes. And then it's out of me. And mostly it's rage or, just sadness or whatever. I have to say mostly it's anger. But I'll just sit down and write like a page out. It's not even legible to other people sometimes. I'm not even like putting periods or commas. I'm just like writing, getting it all out. And sometimes it'll only last 2 or 3 minutes. I'll be crying hysterically, and then it's over until the next time. And so don't be afraid of that, because letter writing, I think, especially in your circumstance, where you're having to live in that situation where you're, having to sort of placate mom to have a relationship with the other two, it's going to help you express things to yourself and in your mind to her and get it out of you. And it's not going to be an endless flow of shit. Yeah. Believe me, it's going to be a lot less work to let that out than to keep it in. You are, like Sven said, doing a tremendous amount of work. And I only know this because I was doing that work.
Yeah. And it doesn't, that's right. And it doesn't have to take forever. I think Casey would agree. And the first few times,
2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3 minutes, but you may find yourself doing it, again and again. But what you're going to discover is the more you let it out is that energy decreases over time. And that we get to calmer places. Any final thoughts, Casey?
Just that this person is going to help so many people, in his life. I just think you are set up. Your life story is set up to help so many people in so many different ways. And I applaud you for going the direction that you have with your life.
Casey, you really hit on a great point. And I want to close with this. And that is that what so many people don't realize, and you nailed it, Casey, you nailed it. And listen to those wise words, Elvis, that the greatest suffering is suffering and dealing with it and getting through it, hardship, terrible, difficult, nasty, but it also provides the greatest insights, the greatest depth, the greatest strength, the greatest wisdom. That your superpowers, Elvis, are locked up in all of your trauma, your pain, and so forth. And the more you go in and find those gems of wisdom and heal and release those pains, the more powerful you will become in the lives that you touch, in your work, in your personal life, your relationship with your husband, in any new family you create, in your friendships, that you will become a radically deeper, more powerful, more compassionate, even more compassionate, and so forth. But you nailed it, Casey, that when we have the courage to heal that stuff, that's where our real, most powerful self comes from. And do you think you might have the courage to keep going further into that stuff, Elvis?
Yeah, for sure.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, I'm going to ask you to just stick around. We're going to just check in right after the show. But Rob, any thoughts? Any final thoughts?
Dad would light our stuff on fire is a very powerful metaphor, but when it's reality, it's just a testament to your spirit, Elvis. So all I can say is good for you.
Amen. Surviving the fires. Surviving the fires. Wow. So to everyone listening around the world, thank you so much for tuning in to Elvis's powerful story and all the support and love you're sending his way. On behalf of the team here, KC remotely and Rob the Rocket in person, I am Sven Erlandson. Thanks for tuning in and have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.